What's going on, Trophy Kids? Week 1 college football show is back. We are so excited to give you this episode. It is longer, though. It's much longer than our normal episodes. We just had a ton to cover. We covered the games from last week. We talk about this upcoming week and the huge slate of games we got. We talk a little bit of gambling. Some of the picks are official. Some of them are not yet official. I'm still kind of solidifying my picks there, but I'll make sure I get that info out to you. Make sure you're following us at Trophy Kids Pod. On Instagram and Twitter for that. But it's a great episode. We give you a ton of information here. We have some good stuff for this. I appreciate your support. Thank you so much for following us here. It's going to be a good football season. Let's go. And welcome to Trophy Kids presented by Bad News Media. It is September 1st. The college football show has returned for week 1 of college football. I have Tim on the line here with us today. Dante may be chiming in halfway through. We'll see. He's stuck in traffic right now. But Tim, we have football. It was back last week, but it's week 1 of college football. I'm giddy. It's like it. Michael, who does the NFL show with me, basically describes these early weeks as like Christmas Eve for adults. Like, I'm just so excited to have legit not pro football teams, but pro football teams are coming back. Like, legit good football coming on this week. So excited.
Yep, last week was like Christmas Eve. Today's like Christmas morning. I mean, I cannot wait for these games to fully start and be on the TV. You know, last week you didn't really need the 3 TV setup. You could get by with 1, maybe 2. But now you're going to need the full 3, maybe 4, plus an iPad type of TV setup to be able to keep track of all these games.
Oh, I absolutely broke out the 3 just because I'm a maniac psychopath. But, you know, I can't get enough of it. I had to watch Nebraska, which we're going to get to in that train wreck, UCLA, Hawaii. I had the Fresno State UConn game. Shoes are melting on the sidelines there. It's just absolute insanity. Week 0, I mean, it's damned if you do, damn. Well, let me see. What's the phrase I'm looking for here? I struggled real hard on phrases. I don't know if you heard last week's show. It was bad. But essentially, like, it's a great spot because if you excelled, you looked great. You get some momentum heading into the season. But if you looked bad, there was nowhere to hide. And that was Nebraska to a T. That was a absolute train wreck. I mean, I lost my bet, which sucked. I analyzed that game perfectly. My take was spot on. The 2 things I forgot, though, I shouldn't say spot on. I missed on. Adrian Martinez was going to forget how to throw a football, and Scott Frost's team was going to be absolutely outcoached by Brett Bielema in his first game at Illinois. Like, Nebraska was the better team. They just did dumber stuff, and the passing game was atrociously bad. But they played better.
Imagine covering that game and also knowing that Illinois was going to lose their starting quarterback in like the first quarter of the game and still win the game.
Not only lose their starting quarterback, but replace him with arguably the worst quarterback. And I don't want to be too hard because they're kids, but arguably one of the worst quarterbacks in college football last year. I mean, the dude was a train wreck at Rutgers. So it's not exactly like Scott Frost, that's one of those games which it is like boosters start calling around and going, what's his buyout again? Like, where are we at with him? Because that is an embarrassment, like a riches of embarrassments for Scott Frost. You have the kid taking the punt into the end zone and then throwing it out of bounds, which is Pop Warner stuff. Like
that you never see. First of all, you don't see people field a punt on the 2-yard line. Then he goes into the end zone and tries to throw it out for a safety. Just absolutely crazy.
Unbelievable. Adrian Martinez, and once again, don't want to be too hard on the kid. They're just kids. But the dude has regressed so hard. Like, so hard. He's missing wide open throws. There were 2 throws that should have been touchdowns that he just completely airmailed it on the guy. That were just routine, easy throws. At that point, Scott Frost just needs to understand that, like, he can't really throw the ball. We need to make more designed runs and just essentially just say screw it and have more quarterback drop back runs. Throw the triple option in there. I don't care. Just do more running. Muck up the game. Like, Illinois is not a good football team at all. Nebraska lost that game more than Illinois won that game. And Scott Frost, that is just an epic failure. It's one of those things, too, where it's like they're just some guys that can't handle the pressure. They just can't handle the pressure of going to their school. We're seeing it with kind of Diaz down in Miami. Like, their dreams drop, their dream school, the pressure just becomes too much, and they absolutely fade under it. And that is Scott Frost to a T with this Nebraska team.
Yeah, it is. I don't understand this quote from him. About half of our game plan was out the window when they lined up how they did. What does that even mean? Like, how? Like, it's a brand new coach, a brand new team. Like, how do you just lose half your game plan out the window just based on how they line up? Like, what? How are you not more prepared? Like, this is game zero. I know it's coming a little bit early. You had a few less practices than the people playing in week one, but what does that mean that you're literally losing your game plan right as soon as the other team lines up against you? You got to come in with a plan and stick to the plan, or come up with a better one on the fly, not just say, oh, we're scrapping our whole game plan and moving on.
Well, also, like, does he think we're idiots? I watched that game. Their game plan was still working. They just weren't executing. Like, it was still like they had players out in the open. They had opportunity to score. They just didn't execute or poorly executed, like, at the end of the day. And also lined up in a different scheme. Like, are you referring to the defense and the change in the defense? Because I knew about that. I knew they were changing to a 3-4. If I knew that, how did Scott Frost not know that? Like, what are you talking about? Like, the offense was Bielema's offense to a T, and I knew the defense was going to be different. So you're telling me you, the guy with a $21 million buyout, didn't understand how they were going to line up? What are you talking about?
It's wild to me. Scott Frost amazes me every time, and it's just crazy. It's Nebraska, and I can't wait to get them out of the Big Ten.
It is an absolute train wreck. I mean, I don't know what you do there. I don't even know. Like, Nebraska one, you have to adjust. And I was tweeting out the Bo Pelini thing half jokingly because, I mean, he did win 9 games. They were a top 25 team in the Pelini era. But, like, Pelini wasn't getting along with guys. He had those recordings. You know, we saw down in LSU this past year as the defensive coordinator. I think he was, right? He was the DC. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The defense hated him. Yeah, like, all those guys hated him. They quit on him. Like, he obviously was, like, you know, coming to the end of his tenure and kind of losing control. But still, you went from that to this. It's nightmare situation. And the panic button's fully out because also the Scott Frost buyout is just ludicrous to start over.
Does Nebraska just have to hit the panic button on the entire athletic department then? Because, like, they have the two perfect coaches. They have Fred Hoiberg in basketball, and they have Scott Frost in football. Like, they literally handpicked the exact coach they wanted to coach both of those teams, and they are both complete dumpster fires.
Yeah, somebody needs to look into the AD situation too at this point, because how do you get that? I mean, I guess, you know what? I'm not even, actually, I don't put it on him, because Scott Frost, there was a legit, like, okay, he might do it. It's going to be hard because, you know, they're not exactly in a fertile recruiting ground. You know, it's a program that doesn't have the kind of shine it used to because, you know, they're not the only team lifting weights and taking steroids. So, you know, things like that go out the window. But, yeah, it's tough for Nebraska. A team that is not in a tough spot, UCLA, had themselves a day, which I also, not to pat myself on the back, but I'm going to pat myself on the back. I am so high on this UCLA. No, let me rephrase that. I am so high on the Chip Kelly program as far as, like, he's been trying to turn the ship, and this year it's finally, like, turned almost straight to just take off. Like, this is the year where that Chip Kelly offense starts to come out and really shine, and we got a taste of that, a little nibble of that. But UCLA is a sleeping giant. They came out and showed the world what they could potentially do this year. And the Pac-12 as a whole, I am so excited. Like, we have so much to cover today. We could probably have a 2-hour show. We're not going to do that. We're gonna pack in a lot in a very efficient manner. But UCLA had themselves a day. They're going to be a game we're going to talk about a little bit here from a betting standpoint. But crazy day. Me and you were texting back and forth about it.
It was wild. I couldn't believe how quickly they got up on them, and then just insane. And I'll never miss an opportunity to throw shade at another program down the road up here. But Zach Charbonnet looked pretty damn good.
So damn good.
Pretty damn good.
So damn good. I mean, that was. It's insane. Like, the whole Pac-12. Like, I love the Pac. I love where Oregon's headed. Like, they hired a DC coordinator that I think is going to solve their problem. Because what's Oregon's biggest problem? They get pushed around and bullied on defense. Like, they're soft. Like, they hired the DC out of Cal, who did a phenomenal job at Cal. Like, they went from the year before he was there, they were outside the top 100 in defensive efficiency. 2 years in, they were ranked, or last year they were 13th in defensive efficiency. Oregon in the past 2 years only put up 38 points against them. Like, they're going to become a tougher defense going forward. They've got the dudes. They purposely recruited. They're coming into California and starting to raid that state. UCLA is starting to wake up, and that sleeping giant that could be there. Because let's face it, I think UCLA, like, USC is kind of a bit of a a tailspin. I'm not going to say they're a dumpster fire because Clay Helton's still winning games. And I like Clay Helton. He's just not a USC coach. Like, he's not getting the most out of that, what that program has to offer. But, like, UCLA is a sleeping giant. They could take advantage of the state. Utah, my pick to win the Pac-12. Big-time football school right now. Arizona State, we'll see what happens with their coaching issues there and scandals there, but they've got a good program. Like, it's just the Pac-12 is going to be so much fun for degenerates this week. Like, I can't wait for Pac-12 After Dark. Like, it's going to be so much fun this year to watch because there's so many good storylines and programs that are finally turning the ship that the Pac-12 is legitimately going to be is on the right direction going forward.
Yeah, I think they were on the right direction slightly, and then COVID happened, and the Pac-12 was not great to any of these teams when it came to COVID protocols and whatnot. So I think we will see some excitement in the Pac-12. I've always wondered why they're not getting their players and keeping their players, because most of the talent's coming from that side of the country. And I know it's a little bit of a TV issue because they're not really on TV that much, but now that gambling is becoming more widespread, the Pac-12 games after dark are becoming talked about a little bit more now.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's an arms. So the state of California, I mean, is one of the most fertile states for recruiting. It's like them, Florida, Texas, Georgia, Ohio, depending on what type you're going for, like athlete you're going for, things like that. But like California is such a rich state, and it's literally like your only competition on that side of the coast is Oregon. So, like, if USC can figure it out, or it's really whichever one of those, USC or UCLA, which if I'm a betting man, which I am, I'm putting it on Chip Kelly to figure it out. He's been there before, and Clay Helton he's a good football coach. He's not what you need at USC. Like, you need Pete Carroll. Lane Kiffin, I know it was a disaster there, but, like, a Lane Kiffin kind of guy that, like, is a seller
like
more than
Meyer when he flames out with the Jaguars.
Exactly, yes, an Urban Meyer, thing like that. Like, the Pac-12 and USC. So it's sort of an arms race between those two because Oregon's just coming down in rating. They're going to be good with NIL. And then there's a couple other schools, but it's ripe for the picking. Like, they're right there. And we are now, Dante has joined the frame. We're talking Pac-12 football. It's going to be, I think, a conference to watch going forward. I am so excited for Pac-12 football. But yeah, it's a state, it's set up right. It just, Chip Kelly's the right coach. They need the right coach at USC. And then that conference, Utah they've got their program ready. Oregon's obviously there. NIL is going to be one of the best things to ever happen to Oregon in that Nike money. It's right for the picking. I love the Pac-12.
Yeah, we made a slight little comment that I'm going to bring up again on Zach Charbonnet being killing it at UCLA now.
We can get into that with the gambling part. But let's get into some games this week, because this week, I mean, starting on Wednesday.
So many.
Wednesday we got games. Thursday we got games. Saturday we got we got a full slate of games. Sunday you got a standalone game. Where do we want to start? Because there is, I mean, do you want to actually? Let's do this. Let's just get this out of the way.
Let's start on Wednesday.
Yeah, I was gonna say Wednesday is.
I didn't realize that was Jacksonville State, like the Deion Sanders school, right?
No, that's
Jackson, Mrs. Jackson, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it's different one. Different one.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Glad I brought that up live.
I was gonna say, do you just want to get out the Michigan State Northwestern game on Friday? We might as well just get that out so we know where we're time after that. Dante has joined us for the key segments here.
Of course.
Going to the game. We'll be our media guy on the ground for this game.
I need my credentials, Nate.
Yeah, I'll get those faxed over right away. Field access. We're building a media company here. Don't worry, we'll get you there someday. Lines at 3. Northwestern is the favorite. Over/under 45.5. I mean, where are you boys at with this?
45.5 seems a little high.
I would agree. Where are we with Michigan State? We were texting a little bit back and forth because your program decided that they wanted to keep their lips shut on the quarterback situation. But our esteemed reporters, Tim and Dante, were on the case early, and we've got a somewhat of a pulse on the QB situation for Michigan State.
Absolutely.
We think we might have cracked the code with Peyton Thorne, but it'll remain to be seen at kickoff. It seems like.
Is Thorne?
I predicted in the group chat that it would be Thorne. Just for the record, I want everyone to know that. So if Thorn comes out on Friday, you know that I had the inside scoop.
That is fair. That came in last night in the group text as I was putting together my notes for this podcast and making picks. I realized I was having a bit of like, oh man, I'm not going to be ready to make some picks, things like that. And then I remembered, I just have like my desk and work area looks like a murder detective's like desk. Like there are just scratches of paper everywhere, notes. I've got packets on like the Pac-12, the Big Ten, like everything. I just jumped right into it. But I was having a bit of a freak out, like, what are we doing? Because I want to potentially bet this game. Who's the quarterback? Because you have two wildly different outcomes, I think, depending on who the quarterback is. Well, I shouldn't say wildly different.
I don't think so. I think they're pretty similar. One's a big play. One's a big gambler. One's got quite a few. One's turnover prone.
I was saying
hit the big play. Thorne is more of your safe bet, can run around a little bit more. He's a little more athletic. He's not going to really wow you with anything. But he is safer with the ball per se. We haven't seen too much of him, but
Russo is averaging like I think a little bit more than a pick a game in his last 28 games. Like it's not great from a turnover standpoint. And Thorne, to his credit, if I remember this correctly, last year ended the season pretty solidly. Like had a bit of a little spark there. Did he not?
It's all a blur. It's all a blur for me, if you're asking.
I only remember one game from last year.
Yeah,
that's fair.
I only remember one game too. The only game that matters. It wasn't the Rutgers game.
That's fair. That's fair.
It wasn't. I was gonna say this. I understand the like being tight-lipped and keeping Northwestern on their toes, but it's also Northwestern. Like, come on. I suspect that when I enter that stadium on Friday, that it is going to be more green shirts in there than purple.
I wouldn't be surprised by that.
I wouldn't be surprised by that at all.
There's a lot of green in Chicago.
So they could tell us who the quarterback is. I mean, I guess it's a moot point now, but like, I don't know. We aren't some like, I don't know where I'm going with that point. We should just know who the quarterback is.
Yeah, he's kind of treating it like he's a first year coach where he's kind of holding as a whole new team and he's holding everything to the vest, and really he kind of is. I mean, he didn't have the opportunity to hit the transfer portal last year, get kids on campus. None of that stuff really happened. So he didn't really even know what he had last year at the beginning of it until the ball got until the game started. Now this year, he's got a little bit more knowledge on what he's dealing with. So yeah, he does want to take every advantage he can to try and get to that 7-5 record or above and try and do something this year as far as showing some progress. So I do like the Spartans in this game.
I think
I've been trying to stay away from betting it because I don't like to bet on my own teams because I already have enough betting interest. I'm a crazy college football fan. I don't need to bet on my own team to get interested in the game. I bet on the games to get interested in them, but I don't need to do that with my own team. So I try and stay away from that as much as possible. But I may get talked into taking this one on the money line here.
Also, I don't know much about. Admittedly, I didn't watch Northwestern last year, so I don't know what this team is returning.
Not a lot.
Nothing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
They lost a ton.
Yeah. An absolute ton. They're going to be very interesting to see where they're at engaged. Like it's a good game to figure out where both these schools are sort of at. They sort of mirror, I think, each other a little bit. This year going into it, but it's all, and I guess I should also, for the fans out there, we're gonna be talking some picks and stuff like that. None of this is final until later in this week. We're recording this on Tuesday night. While I have done a ton of off-season prep, like I was showing Tim before the show, like every conference I have like at least 6 or 8 pages on just on hard paper. Never mind what I got at my computer for prep, but like there's some things I still want to look over. So some of these are not solid. I don't. This is a tough one to gauge. I don't have a read. The number, like that, is such a Big Ten over/under number. Like this is quintessential Big Ten, just like slugfest number. Like that's.
I mean,
so
we
perfect.
might not see a pass in the first quarter.
That's. Yeah.
Completed, you mean, right?
Yeah.
Completed pass.
Yes.
We may not see a completed pass in the first quarter. Yes.
It's so funny because you look at like that line 45, and then you look at like Louisville Ole Miss. I think is set at like 75. It's just complete polar. I mean, once again, those two defenses are about as nice as a morning run to the restroom after drunken Taco Bell. Like it's a shit show. So like I expect that number to be high, but complete. You have such polar opposites in this week just immediately with a line like that, and then other lines out there at like 75, mid 60s. I think that might be the lowest.
What's the line on the OSU Minnesota?
The over under or the point spread?
I'm sorry, the over under.
Over under 64.5. Yeah, I think you guys have the lowest. I'm seeing it as the lowest
I'm looking
point.
At 63.
Point. Yeah.
But yeah.
Depends on where your book's at, but I'm seeing Michigan State Northwestern as the lowest over under of the weekend. At least on the book I'm on.
It's
right
not
now.
Surprising. I mean, if both teams get to 20, I would be surprised.
Utah is pretty low. Utah, Weber State.
Well, yeah,
45.5. Utah might beat that by themselves.
The MSU Northwestern game may go to halftime 6-9.
If you're lucky.
Yeah.
It's so bad. You brought
9 points. You think Michigan State's going to make 3 field goals?
No. I'm saying 9 Northwestern, 6 MSU.
Oof. You think Northwestern's going to make 3 field goals?
Possibly. I don't know.
I have more faith in Coughlin than whoever the
their
Northwestern kicker is.
But see, Northwestern and MSU can do the same thing. In previous, we've seen them do it. Both get to the red zone and not score.
Oh yeah. I can see that.
So they might be kicking chip shots in.
Mm-hmm.
When they should be putting 6 points on the board.
Yeah, see, I see Northwestern as you know how Northwestern always has those surprisingly good years followed up by those surprisingly bad years.
Yes, absolutely.
This is that surprisingly bad year, and it's not that surprising because they lost so many people.
Yeah,
and I don't know that they really have a quarterback because then they named Hunter Johnson the quarterback, and he didn't look that good last year from what I remember.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about
Ramsey's gone, so yeah, their quarterback situation. There's a lot of schools out there this year, surprisingly so, with all the COVID rules and stuff, that have some pretty big question marks coming into the season at quarterback, and Northwestern is certainly one of them. Where you don't know.
Somehow he beat out Helinski from South Carolina.
Yeah. The Fitzgerald system is also different, so it's. He may fit the system a little bit better, but yeah, it was definitely a surprising part of fall camp, spring ball for sure.
Fitzgerald may also be willing to sacrifice this game to figure out what he has, because he knows he's playing on that side of the bracket,
Also very true. I mean, he could use this as a game just to test some things, because the expectations are not high for Tucker this year coming into the season at all. He's sort of like Mike Norvell down at Florida State, where the expectations they're not super high. It's like, can we start? This is year 0 almost, given what happened last year. Like let's take stock at where we're at and kind of get the ball rolling, but the expectation isn't super high.
And his job is at least safe for the rest of this year. I don't think anybody's calling for his head at Northwestern. So
God
no.
Yeah.
No. So
anything else before we move on to some of the other larger games at hand this week?
No, let's go.
Let's talk.
You can see the rest of our takes on Twitter.
Yes. We'll be very accurate or very active on Twitter this week and Instagram. You can shout out. We'll get the handles out here at the end. You mentioned it. Ohio State, Minnesota, kicking off the week big time on Thursday night.
I'm excited.
Minnesota's a 13.5 point underdog. Over/unders at 64.5. Where are we sitting on this for this game? What's
this
kind of our
smells
field?
Weird.
Yeah, I don't like this line at all.
I don't.
I would have expected it to be like 21.
Yes.
Or like 18. Being only 14. Kind of makes me question what CJ Stroud really is.
Yeah, it's something, dude. I don't know. Like, I agree.
Nate's brain just broke right there. He got all sad for the first time talking about college football. He just went,
I agree because I initially wanted to pounce the fuck out of this Ohio State line. Like, I was just like, what is going on here? Because I look at Minnesota and I go, your defense was trash last year. I mean, there's not a whole lot. I mean, they lost a ton last year, so it made sense. They were replacing 7 starters last year, so they had a ton of regression, but it's hard to project where they're going to be at this year. The offense, I don't know who's going to be the guy in the pass game. Like, Bateman accounted when he played last year, he was like 50% of their targets. Like, I don't know who Tanner Morgan's even going to be throwing to. They have one of the best running backs in the country. In Ohio State, their defense has got some big questions, but if you know they're so one-dimensional, you know, that allows you to do some things. And the Ohio State defensive line is really good. They lose their top 4 linebackers from last year. The offense, it's so hard for me to sit back when I think about what Minnesota is bringing to the table this year. And it is going to be a wait-and-see game, but it's hard for me to imagine Stroud is going to be bad with how many weapons he's had. It's just what level of elite is this offense? And I think this is, you know, they're probably a top 5 team coming into the season. They're not a national championship caliber team, and it is boom or bust in Ohio State, I think. It's the system days built, but I have a hard time. Like, I keep catching myself. You're right, Tim. Like, it's just like I don't understand how this line's not higher. I very much want to take Ohio State. I think I'm going to take the points on the over because the offensive line, you have 2 great tackles. You know, there's some concerns on the offensive line, but you have the best wide receiver duo and probably wide receiver room in the country. You have a 1-2 punch in the running back. Master Teague is great, and then the Henderson kid, the freshman, is going to be fantastic. I mean, it's essentially like a workhorse in Teague, and then kind of a specialty guy who's going to kind of be some big explosive plays. It's just, I don't know, man. I'm with you. The line's giving me trouble.
Yeah.
I'm spitballing back and forth in my brain.
I'd feel more comfortable with this line at 18.5. I'd be jumping on it
Yes.
for Ohio State.
100%.
14, I'm like, no, that's too scary.
So here's my thing, and just to play devil's advocate to exactly what you said about your explosive receivers for Ohio State, you do have, while Minnesota's defense was terrible last year, like, Minnesota always has good secondary players, and
That is true.
like, they have Durr. So, like, if you need someone to exploit a young quarterback, like, I don't think it's the receivers that Ohio State has to worry about. It's the quarterback making a mistake.
Yeah.
Right? And if you let Durr catch 1 or 2 interceptions, it might be really, really, really bad for Ohio State really quickly. I think for me watching this game, the same storyline is taking place, but differently. And what I mean by that is it's trial by fire for both Minnesota and for our new quarterback our new Ohio State quarterback who has not thrown a pass in college, Mr. Stroud, right?
Yep.
So trial by fire for him because you play a Big Ten opponent, no cupcake game for you in your first game. And then trial by fire for Minnesota because if you can win, if you can get the upset on this, you can set your path through the Big Ten potentially and, you know, have a good season when nobody expected you to have one. And if you don't think it can happen, MSU had a season just like this not too long ago. So it can. The Big Ten is one of the conferences where, you know, you could turn around your whole season in the first game.
Yeah, and well, here's the other thing: Ohio State has Oregon next week. Like they know there's a very physical, good football team that also has question marks at quarterback in Oregon, but a very good team with a ton of talent, just oozing talent in Oregon coming in next week to play you. Like you do not have a lot of time to figure this out. Like there is zero room to figure this out at quarterback this year.
Dante, don't you dare talk me into betting the over here and sprinkling a little
Never.
bit sprinkling a little bit on Minnesota money line.
I would not sprinkle the money line, but
yeah.
That's the only way there's value.
I want to remind everyone that I am 0 for like 700 on this podcast. So
he's confident giving out a bet. He's like,
yeah, so I'm never confident in giving out a bet.
I'm leaning the over, and I'm leaning Ohio State. I'll give that pick out probably Thursday. I'll put it on our Instagram. If you're not following Trophy Kids Pod on Instagram and Twitter, I'll probably put out my pick then, but I am leaning over. I want to see if that number moves at all in one direction or the other. I got to imagine the spread's going to. But it hasn't been moving. That's the crazy part. Like, it doesn't seem to be moving. It is a head-scratcher.
It feels weird to me, and I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just um, but that doesn't make any sense either. I was thinking maybe it's just the first week thing, but if you think of Ohio State money would drive that line up. So Vegas
Yeah.
is basically just taking a gamble here,
Yeah,
right?
I agree. I
That's the
don't
only
know.
thing that makes any sense is Vegas is just taking a gamble here by setting this line and hoping that Ohio State um, keeps it a close game.
I agree. Yeah, I don't it's a head scratcher for me. I also forgot to say at the top of this week is so loaded with games. Like we're going to talk about it here in a second. I know Tim may have to hop off here, but we got Clemson, Georgia, 3-5, Texas versus Louisiana, 21 versus 23 ranked team, Iowa, Indiana, 18 versus 17, Wisconsin, Penn State, 13 versus 19, Miami, Alabama, 14 versus 1. Like they're just, and that's not even including like the meat and potato games that we've got littered throughout the week. Like it's so exciting. But yeah, this is it. We start off with a banger on Thursday night, but it's a hard game. It's going to be super important next week. This is one of those games too. All these games where like this week is so hard for betting and picking games because there's just so many questions. Like we just don't know what CJ is going to be like. We don't know what the Oregon quarterbacks like. There's just so many teams with so many questions. Next week, all these lines are going to be overreacted based off this week. Like there's going to be so many wide open spreads and overreaction city on teams. And I have a feeling this game is going to lead to a ton of overreaction one way or the other.
Big time overreactions. And then before we transition into our next game, did you guys see the starting quarterback get announced for the Tennessee Volunteers, the Michigan of the SEC?
Good old Joe Milton.
Joe Milton.
Yeah. In that dumpster fire of a I mean, he's going from one sort of dumpster fire to another, which is
No. He transferred from one dumpster fire to another dumpster fire.
Not sort of.
Yeah. That's a good point. It is. Which when we get to we're not really going to talk about it, but one of my picks this week is the UNC Virginia Tech game. Same thing at Virginia Tech. Hooker, the quarterback there, went from Virginia Tech to Tennessee. I mean, what does that say about the Virginia Tech program right now? Like the people that are fleeing schools to go to Tennessee, you're just same thing with Milton. Like, what the hell is going on at these universities where you're actively choosing to go to Tennessee right now?
I don't know.
Next game, I'm gonna just do it. The biggest game of the week, Georgia Clemson. This game, the line's at 3.5. Georgia's the underdog. Over unders 51.5. I'm gonna be in Atlanta this week, not for this game, but it should be interesting. We'll be kind of around the city and whatnot, but. This game, talk about a game where I've been going back and forth. I'm leaning Georgia right now. I'm leaning dogs. But this game, where are you at with this one? Because I have been going the moment on Sunday, the Sunday night I started my prep. It is the thing I honed in the most on Sunday night on, and it's just I'm having a hard time gauging it right now.
I don't know, because I'm going totally off of feel here, Nate. So I'm going to need a little bit more of this research that you keep going in on to back me up. But like last year, it felt like Trevor Lawrence was really holding up that Clemson team and making sure that offensive line looked halfway decent.
Oh, 100%.
And so you got DJ who can basically do the same thing, but really that's what they have. The problem you have with Georgia is you got Kirby Smart, who chokes in the biggest games, and so you don't really know what you're getting out of Kirby Smart, whether or not he'll actually be able to put his foot on the opponent's throat and finish off the game like he should. So I'm really torn. The only thing I really like in this game, I don't like it, but would lean to would just be going Georgia money line, because I'm very interested in this game, and like I said, I'll bet on the games so that I'm interested in the games, and I'm already interested in this game. So I may just, if I'm already interested in games, usually I'll just bet on the over and hope for the best. So
That's fair.
As far as what to do on this one, I'm as lost as you sound as well. Leaning Georgia to pull off the upset, but I really don't know.
So Georgia has some key injuries right now, right, in the receiving core.
Yeah.
And they have a tight end out, but they're returning their quarterback.
Who I love JT Daniels.
Yeah, JT Daniels is good. But can he play is he going to play a full season?
That is the question of the moment.
I don't know.
But
Yeah.
Did we ever figure out what happened to JT Daniels at the beginning of last year? Like, was he still just returning from or
from injury.
rehabbing from his ACL?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Because it seemed weird because he was cleared to play and everything, but he wasn't getting starts, and then all of a sudden he started to towards the end of the year.
Yeah. Georgia has to take advantage of Clemson starting a new quarterback, even though it really isn't a new quarterback, and I'm sure they're just going to plug and play here. But that's what Georgia has to take advantage here. And is Kirby Smart going to be able to coach well enough to exploit those little itty bitty mistakes that Clemson will probably make?
Yeah, because he really has to coach to just stop the quarterback, because that's mainly what they got there. Is the quarterback and DJ, and if he can figure out how to scheme against DJ, then they're going to be sitting pretty. But if he doesn't do that, then we don't know. And if he gets into a situation where the passing game's working for him and they get up quick, and then he just ends up running the ball to kill some clock, he'll get in trouble, because DJ can sling one to an open receiver who's breaking down, and he'll throw him open, and they'll be up. They'll be putting up 14 points real quick.
Smart has to also be willing to open up the playbook on this first game.
100%.
Yes.
Which
can't be holding anything.
You cannot hold anything back on this game.
I mean, for me, it's Kirby Bubble Boy Smart. Like, he tries to keep himself protected from everything. You see it on defense. They don't blitz nearly enough. I mean, they're outside the top 50 in blitz rate. Even with all that insane elite talent, they're outside the top 60 in havoc rate. Offensively, things have been getting better. I mean, he hired Todd Monken, who brought this offense into the 21st century. I mean, last year you saw the offense really take a step forward and be a little bit more aggressive. JT Daniels changes everything for Kirby Smart, because for about the first time, really, you have a quarterback that can open up the pass game long. I saw something where I think it was like, what was it? Plus, I got to find that note. But essentially, like JT Daniels, his passer rating's 117 on deep balls right now. Before in Kirby Smart, I think they only have 4 passing games with plus 300 yards passing. 2 of them are from JT Daniels. Like, that's a big difference. Like, he opens up the run game. The tight end room, yes, they're going to miss Washington. Expected to miss Washington. But there's huge depth at the tight end position. That might be the best tight end room depth-wise in the country. You've just got 5-star after 5-star there. You have an insanely talented defense. The offense is in year 2 of the Monken system, which Monken came out and said, like, last year we can only use 40% of this offense, which is terrifying to think about what this could look like. But it's the Kirby Smart question. It is, does he play it safe, or does he dial up some things defensively, and does he let go? Does he do the Nick Saban route, where we saw this with Saban? Like, Saban has control over the entire program. But as far as the down-to-down play calling, he allowed his offensive coordinators to get much more aggressive. We saw it with Dable. We've seen it with Kiffin. We saw it with Stark. Like, he allowed that offense to evolve, still keeping a watchful eye, but Kirby's kind of got to do the same thing, and he's got to change it defensively. The problem is, for me with this game, I think I know what I'm going to get out of Georgia. I don't know what I'm going to get out of Clemson. DJ, I know, is a great to me is a top 5 quarterback. He's going to be good this season, I think, but the questions are O-line. What does that look like? Wide receiver room. I mean, you're returning Justin Ross, but Justin Ross didn't play last season because they essentially, from what I understand, had to fuse his spine from an injury. Like, what does he look like? What does your running back situation look like? Because you're replacing an insane amount of production. And the other question is, there's no depth at that quarterback position. Last year, if Trevor Lawrence goes down, you have DJ in the wing. So they had, even with Trevor Lawrence, who's going to get a huge payday, who's going to be this top pro, they had 44 designed runs last season. Like, the offense requires the quarterback to be mobile. It requires some drawn plays run. You have nothing behind DJ. So does that change the offensive dynamic where you're not running DJ as much because you don't want him to get hurt and you're trying to protect him a little bit more? And that, if that is the case, I don't know if we can see peak Clemson offense if they're not running DJ. But if they are, then you open yourself up to huge risk liability. So Clemson, I'm leaning the dogs, but it's tough because Georgia's the better football team to me, right? On paper right now. We just don't know enough about Clemson. But DJ DJ is scaring my brain right now. I got to pull the trigger at some point, but that's where I'm at with this game, essentially. Tim, you're muted.
I heard you. I'm just going to watch it.
Yeah, that's exactly where I am too. I think DJ could break it open, but it's more I question Kirby Smart still. And that's kind of where it all lies, where all the doubt lies with me.
Yeah, I mean, and if Kirby Smart's going to do it, it has to be this year. Like Alabama's cycling through production because they have to replace a ton of production. We're just sort of assuming Alabama's going to be good, which I guess we could talk about them next. Clemson's got to kind of filter out some production issues. They're replacing a ton of guys. What are they going to look like? You know, the two-headed monster that has been ahead of the college football rankings this year, they're replacing a ton. Same with Ohio State. You know, they're going to have regressions on defense. They're switching schemes on defense. You know, what are they going to look like? So, like, if Kirby Smart's going to do it, I think it kind of has to be this year. And he's got to be – I think he knows that, but he's got to turn it loose because he's got the talent to do it. It's just he's bubble boy. Like, he's just a bubble boy. He's too afraid of the outside world.
Yep. Yeah. I agree with all that.
Alrighty. Let's talk Alabama, Miami. Why not? It's a big game. Tim, you can. I know you may have to go, so you can hop off at any point if you need to. But, Alabama, Miami. I don't know how to honestly.
Brains are just broken in week 1, I think.
Well,
let's just say that.
Well,
Are they still a 17-point favorite in this game?
So that's the thing. I don't know how not to laugh at this game because I want Miami to be like a threat, but I just know they're not. Like they're just not. Like
you know that defense isn't gonna stand up. But they win at quarterback, right? Derek King should be heads and heels.
Derek King's a top 5 college quarterback.
A lot.
Over who's it? Bryce Young, right?
Yes.
Bryce Young.
Yeah.
So, but 17.5 is ridiculous.
19.5 is what I'm seeing.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's Derek King.
Derek King might be one of those quarterbacks that we see like once he transitions to the NFL, and you're gonna be, and he gets in as long as he gets into the proper scheme, where it's gonna be like, was he really like? I think he's gonna be much better in a pro style than he is at Miami right now.
Dude, his offensive line situation. I mean, the left tackle's good down there at Miami, but outside of that, I mean, you remember last year, I just tore it. Like, it was embarrassing to watch. I don't know how they stand up here. Like, I am legit, like, there was a point in this offseason when I was researching, like, the ACC in Miami where I was like, I would honestly not even start Derek King in this game. Like, the injury, because he was just coming back from a major injury. Like, I would just be like, I'm going to save him. I'm going to be smart. We're not going to win this game, and I'm just going to save him for the rest of the season. Like, it was to that point because the tight end's good down there, but I don't know what Miami has to offer. He is a top 5 quarterback in college football. Derek King is a top 5 quarterback in college football, easily. One of the most elite quarterbacks.
When King can, when the offensive line holds up and he can move in the pocket or even move outside the pocket and he just throws the ball. I mean, he has to have like, what is this, his 5th year playing?
He just balls out, dude. I mean, he balled out in that mock game. He was perfect in their mock game, their spring game this year. Or not their spring game, but like the one they just recently did.
He has 9,600 total yards.
Yeah, he's amazing. It's just, what can you get out of that offensive line? Like, just
or Miami's defense.
That is true. Diaz is in a tough spot because it is. I mean, the offense completely relies on Derek King. They are not a down-to-down offense. They rely completely on his explosiveness. They have a hard time managing, the down-to-down yardage. They can't get much going offensively. Defensively is the same thing. They're phenomenal in creating havoc and chaos. When they blitz, they're great, but you can't blitz 100% of the game, and they're terrible. It's sort of the same story on defense. Like, they're just bad down-to-down when they're not creating blitz havoc. They're just bad. And Diaz knows it's a tough year because he's taken over defensive play calling. Like, he knows this is he's on the chopping block. He's the Scott Frost of the ACC, where like he got his dream job and hasn't been able to handle it. Except for, in his case, he has no excuse built in with recruiting ground. He's in one of the most fertile recruiting grounds in the country. He's got all the resources you can have. You're on national television. You're the you. Like, you should have been able to figure this out, sort of.
And you have a fan base that is basically never going to leave you. So it pains, I know, the people who are used to the Miami of old to see this team still have some of the talent that they were comparable talent to what they were getting in some positions, and still not being able to produce. And again, it's not like your conference is the hardest conference in America.
No, like that's a sleeping giant waiting to wake up, and he just hasn't woken them up. And in that conference is ripe for kind of the second throne. Like there are teams kind of edging each other right now, but like the ACC needs to wake up, and Miami's in the perfect position to do it.
Yeah, I mean, we saw when Notre Dame had that position to do it last year when they were forced to play it. They did it, right? They went right into that second fiddle, or the second chair or whatever.
Yeah.
So you're right. It's wide open for another team to go there.
I kind of feel like I'd like Miami to cover here almost. With Alabama losing so much on offense, I don't know how they can outscore them necessarily by 19.5 points, because I feel like Miami's good for at least like 21 points.
Yeah.
Can Alabama really put up 40?
I agree with Tim on this.
That's the tough thing, because they lost 2 first-round picks at wide receiver. They lost their quarterback, who was also a first-round pick. They lost their running back, also another first-round pick. Like, all of their skill positions are
offensive
gone.
line. They lost some guys.
So, can they really put up 40 points against this Miami's 21 even? And that's where I come into question. And I do think Miami can show something here. And it's a freshman. It's essentially, is he still a freshman quarterback, but regardless, he's never taken a snap in college yet, or he hasn't thrown too many passes. He probably got in a few times in Alabama's games, knowing him, but I think if you can just get to him and rattle him a few times on some of those blitzes that they bring, they could be able to rattle him pretty quickly. So we'll see, but I do kind of like, I'm almost ready to go for Miami to cover here, rather than just leaning there. That'll probably be one of my picks this weekend.
Yeah,
I agree.
If Alabama gets into a shootout with Miami, then I think it spells a bad game for Alabama.
Yeah. I mean,
definitely.
The word out of Tuscaloosa too is that defense. This is the year Alabama sort of returns that Alabama we're familiar with, where the defense kind of carries the offense more of the time. Because we are. I would say, I shouldn't say we, I am not making this, but it feels like most of kind of the mainstream media, mass media, is just assuming Alabama's just going to pick right up and kind of move forward. Like they're assuming Young's going to be good. They're assuming they're going to be able to fill in Najee Harris, and they're assuming the wide receiver room's going to step up. They have a number 1 guy, but who's the number 2 guy in that receiving core? Like, I don't know if they have a definitive number 2. Like, we just make a ton of assumptions because it's Nick Saban and Alabama, and that's generally safe. But this year it does feel different. Like, it doesn't feel like they just have that next guy to step in. Also because, like, in years past, we've generally seen that next guy. Like, we saw, Jalen Hurts right before he took over. We saw Tua before he took over. Like, we saw Mac Jones a little bit there. Like, we just haven't – we're just assuming a lot with Alabama, and I don't like to do that, especially gambling-wise.
When you're looking at this top 10 as it currently – sits, right, the preseason, top 10, like, I cannot look at any of these teams and say they're dominant.
Oklahoma, my man. Oklahoma's my natty pick. Oklahoma, my dude. I gave it last week. They are my natty pick this year.
All right, I'll let you have that.
I get what you're saying. Yeah, I'm with you.
Like, I don't think you could put if it was Oklahoma versus Alabama week 1.
It'd be tough.
Would you still be that confident?
Yeah, I mean, I'm so high on Oklahoma, but the problem with Oklahoma is, like, I'm also picking them because I think they're going to have time for their defense to kind of settle in a little bit, because that secondary is a little odd. But I mean, the Oklahoma offense is going to be elite. Their front 7 is extremely good. It's just that secondary for Oklahoma is a question. So yeah, you're right. Like, if it was week 1, I would not feel great. But This is like this year is going to be so interesting in college football. I also was ready to make the argument too. Like if we're going to see a non-Power 5 team like a Cincinnati make it in this year, this is the year before they expand the playoffs. This is the year to do it because there's so many teams cycling production. Like there were so many teams that lost so much at the top of it. And Cincinnati, I mean, we're going to sort of take a detour here. Their schedule, like they get Notre Dame, they get Indiana. Like if as long as they play those teams and those teams are healthy and look good at that point, like this is the year they run it and they win their conference. They're probably in because I don't think we're going to get. I don't think we're going to get a completely undefeated teams across the board in the Power 5 conferences. So like,
no,
this is going to be the year.
Clemson always feels like they drop a game that they're not supposed to drop, and then an SEC team. You're not going to get 2 undefeated SEC teams because they clearly have to play each other.
Right.
So that leaves a spot for them. So you got Oklahoma, an SEC team, an Ohio State, and then Cincinnati.
Yeah.
I mean, that Clemson, North Carolina, right? That's going to be.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think Clemson.
Sam Howell is going to have a good year this year.
And the team.
Even Miami still.
I got to give a shout out. I can't remember your name. I apologize if you're listening. It was at my cousin's party this summer. I was talking shit about BC a little bit there. One, you were spot on right. I can't remember your name. I apologize for it, but you were spot on right about the quarterback. I was thinking of a complete different dude. When I looked into BC this year, BC is sort of my surprise team in the ACC. I don't think they're going to win it, but I think BC is going to be a threat. Like what they're doing, Hapley's doing up at Boston College right now, like even they are going to be a good team. Now, they're not going to win the ACC. I'm not saying that by any stretch of the imagination, but Phil, their quarterback is solid. They're not one-dimensional. The defense is looking good. Like there are teams that are going to test Clemson, I think, especially if they do not figure it out early offensively. Like if they're not able to plug in and go, there are some teams in the ACC that could challenge Clemson this year too and give them that one loss that you're saying. Clemson's still going to win the ACC championship. But to your point, Tim, like there are teams this year that I could see if you're not paying attention that sneak up on you if you're Clemson.
They even have that weird chance against Pittsburgh where Pittsburgh will end up 5-4 and beat like a top team. Like they do it every year, it seems like.
Exactly. All right, next one. It's funny because this was literally right next on my list on my prep sheet. Indiana, Iowa. This game, -3.5 is Iowa. Over under is 45. Where do we stand here on this game? Because I have some thoughts on this one, but
if you want to watch a better version of the MSU Northwestern game, go ahead and watch the Iowa Indiana game.
You said Michigan State had the lowest over under 45. Well, I'm looking at the same over under at 45.
Right.
I missed it.
Oh, good old Big Ten football. Really, like I'm excited to watch this game. I think this game will the Illinois-Nebraska game, that doesn't count. This game should showcase what the Big Ten should look like in this Iowa versus Indiana game.
Oh, the quintessential Big Ten.
Not like that Illinois-Nebraska game.
Oh my God.
I mean, I don't know. This one to me feels like Indiana could get popped early, but it's also a question of do the wheels finally fall off for Kirk Ferentz? And we'll see with all the stuff that went on with his strength coach that was all over last year, I think. And I don't remember if that was before last year or if it was during last year into the off season. So we'll see whether that takes hold and Iowa just kind of starts to fall apart. Is Indiana really real? I mean, I know they've been showing signs of becoming a real team, but can they take that next step and actually finish this game off? Because playing at Iowa is no joke, and that's why the line is set at 3. Is that home field advantage basically worth the 3 points?
Yeah, this game is like hopping in a time machine and going back to the 1910s. Like it is run, punt. Trench warfare is what it's all about.
Strap on those leather helmets.
Yes.
Yeah, but not with Michael Penix. Like he's gonna let Michael Penix throw them.
I'm talking more about Iowa. Like when we watch Iowa, like it's hopping back into a time machine because it's all about offensive defensive line dominating, running the ball, and minimizing your passing. Because perfect example. I think this stat applies to the Kirk era. Like he's 51-6 when they run the ball. If they get more than 100 yards rushing, they're 2-15 if they rush for less than 100 yards. So like there you go. Spencer's really kind of terrible under pressure. He's got a passer rating of 29% when he's under pressure, the quarterback. They don't look to like really throw the ball that much. They utilize their tight ends a ton. They punt way too much in positive territory, like uncomfortably so, when they should probably be going for it a little bit more. But on the other side of the ball, you have Indiana, where Tom Allen is getting absolutely the most out of his players. Like that, you want to talk about a coach, like you could argue Kirby Smart probably doesn't get the most out of his talent and the insane talent. Tom Allen gets the most out of the talent he's bringing into Indiana. Like everybody is lockstep in the right direction. They're all bought into the program. Their biggest concern is keeping Penix upright. And because when he's got time, he's a fantastic college quarterback and can really spread the field. And we all see the wonderful things he can do, but the biggest problem is keeping him healthy and not running for his life. And that's, Iowa's going to have a good defensive line this year. I don't know what the rest of that they're kind of undermanned, maybe defensively elsewhere, but like it's an interesting story here.
Yeah. Also, Iowa doesn't get its chance to like knock the rust off, so to speak, because they are such a slow school when it comes to terms to playing football. And the first team that you're going to play is a team that is going to try to air it out. So can Iowa like withstand the onslaught of Michael Penix, which he's probably the second best quarterback, if not maybe the best quarterback in the Big Ten right now on paper.
I gotta do that in my head.
That's weird to say, but you're not that far off.
Yeah.
I mean, all you really have is the unknown of C.J. Stroud.
Yeah, he's better than Clifford at Penn State. He's better. Well, depends on what version of Graham we get, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, Dante.
It's true.
It depends on which version. Probably. I mean, he's. You don't know what you're going to get. Right now, as far as the guys out there, he probably is the most consistent out of everybody. Yeah, you know what you're going to get with him, and it's a high production value. Yeah.
Yeah, you know if you can get to him, if you can rattle him.
Yeah, which teams can do. They often lose the battle up front, unfortunately, for Indiana.
Yes. But if you let if the O-line holds up, and they don't have to hold up long because he'll get the ball out of there.
Yep.
If the O-line holds up, then Iowa may be looking at the wrong end of a 20-point deficit.
Yes, 100%. So I don't have a pick in this game really. I mean,
no, this is the one you just watched.
Yeah, I'm just gonna watch.
This one I like Indiana money line here.
Oh, a little Indiana money line. I'm seeing a little plus 150. I don't hate it.
One.
I mean,
this one. This is the first week where I look for value in the money line. I don't really like betting spreads under 3 points. That's fair. Not really worth it to me, especially with it being the first week. If I have a good feel on a game, I'm just going to go for it.
That's probably what I'm going to do in the Georgia game when it comes down to it. Like I'm a strong lean Georgia -3.5, and at that point or plus 3.5. I'm probably just going to go money line with them. So I'm with you on that logic. That is first week logic,
especially first week.
Yes,
you might 100%. As well just go for
it. I agree. Say fuck it, let's go. All gas, no brakes.
Exactly.
I'm with you. I know Tim's got to go here. We're going to continue on for a few other games. Anything before you go game-wise or take you want to get out there before week one?
No, those were the main ones that I wanted to get out there. The Michigan State game. We'll be interested to see how they come out the gate. See if they look way more prepared than they did last year with their ups and downs and just looking like they weren't even a football team at some point, and then winning against Northwestern and Michigan. So it's just let's hope that we see some positives out of that game.
I agree.
I'm optimistic.
And then we'll see how Nebraska fares against Fordham.
God. That is just, I mean.
I was scrolling through the lines to see if I saw anything else, and then I saw Nebraska's playing Fordham.
It's not, that situation. It's gone sour quickly for Scott Frost there, as we talked about earlier in the show.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty, good sir.
All right.
We'll see you. We're going to stay on here. I got a
Good
couple
luck.
other games. I'm assuming, Dante, you're good to go here for a couple
Yeah, I'm
more.
good to go.
I got another Big Ten matchup here because
Yes.
this is a team that I gave the warning. I said, there's a little silent gas in the program. I think the milk is starting to sour and nobody can smell it yet. The recruiting class looks great coming in, but this year is going to be an interesting one. Penn State versus Wisconsin. I'm referring to Penn State here. I think the milk is starting to sour a little, and you just haven't smelt it yet with Penn State. The line's at 5.5. Over-under's at 50 for this game. Where are you at for? I mean, the Big Ten is just. I mean, they're opening this week. Good on the Big Ten for really just kind of stacking games on games to open up this week. It feels very much like Big Ten basketball transferring over to football. Like we've just got good quality games across the Big Ten. This is another one right off the bat. Where are you off the rip on this?
So here's my thing. I love it. The Big Ten is highly represented in the top 25. We got some top 25 matchups here, but my conspiracy mind is working. Where I think they did this so they could drop all the teams from the top 25 very quickly.
Fair.
And then they'll say, well, we gave you a chance. And then so we could put 3 SEC schools or whatever in the playoffs.
Exactly.
That's my conspiracy theory. Where am I at on this game? I am still not as down on Penn State as you are. And I think Wisconsin is in a position of, I know you're talking about everybody else like restarting and like rebuilding. But I think Wisconsin got a shock to their system last year, and I think they're going to still be trying to shake off that. I think the Nittany Lions, they should win this.
Yeah, I don't disagree with the Wisconsin got a bit of a shock to their system, especially offensively, because they came out of the gate just firing with Graham Mertz. And to that credit, or to that point, he did have a pretty solid bout with COVID. He then had the shoulder injury. So I don't know if we can give him a completely fair evaluation. There's a lot of quarterbacks out there where I kind of give that leeway, first year or COVID year, things like that, where I kind of shake it off. But it is certainly the question, because if Wisconsin can get the offense going, I mean, the running back situation should be better this year. They didn't have that kind of stereotypical running back situation where it's just like, they're a team, we talk about Alabama, how we just assume they're going to kind of plug in just whoever and it's going to keep rolling. Wisconsin's sort of the same way with running backs. We just, at least I take for granted, like they're always going to have that dude that can just step in and be a big-time back. And they didn't really have that last year. The tight end situation, I think, is good for them. The running back room should be solid. It's what that offense can bring, because the defense, is going to be good. Jim Leonard for Wisconsin, that I think is a bit of a conundrum if you're Wisconsin, because right now Jim Leonard's turning down jobs, but at some point he's going to accept a job. And if this offense can't get going, do you stick with your current situation, or do you say, hey, Jim, like you're coaching waiting, or you just fire and you get Jim that head coaching position? Because he might be the best defensive coordinator in the country right now. He's up there.
So when you're talking about, and I guess this is how we set it up, ladies and gentlemen. We're gonna talk back and forth. He'll do Wisconsin, I'll do Penn State.
Yeah.
Well, we are talking about question marks at Penn State, right? We don't know what that O-line looks like. We don't know what they have at center, really.
It's a big concern for me.
It's a huge concern for Penn State, but we know that their running back is going to be pretty solid. So if Penn State can get the ground game running, which is kind of funny because this is what you're kind of saying about Wisconsin, I guess it's a game of who's going to get the ground game first.
100%.
Right?
Yeah. I completely agree. Because Penn State's issue here, and I don't want to be too harsh because they're I've said this so many times. They're kids. Like I don't like picking out. I generally like to keep it as like a unit, like the wide receiver units doing terrible, the passing game suffering. But like Clifford was bad last year, and there's a point to you kind of give him similar leeway. Like he's had this. They're on their 4th OC in 5 years. They've had no stability offensively. There's no real identity there. But his footwork was piss poor last year. He airmailed a ton of balls. He was really good on play action.
Yes.
But do they keep that this year? And you need a bit of a running game to even make that a threat. And so, he's really good there. Do they use heavy tight end sets because they got a good tight end room? Kind of simple passing game and lean on the running backs. And if they do that, then Penn State, I think, there's some questions on what they're going to look like defensively, but offensively, I think we start to see them turn. It's just, it's very similar question marks.
Yeah, for defense though, like we know that front 4 or 5 for Penn State is solid, right?
Yeah,
Like
I
their
mean,
linebacker, like that. It's
yes.
when you get outside, right? So then my question is Wisconsin going to throw the ball?
That is the question. I mean, the question of the day is what do they have? Why? Because they're going to be able to take advantage of with the tight end situation. Their tight end situation is very good. That is sort of the bigger question: is one, can Graham Martz be accurate down the field, and two, who's the guy that's going to step up and be that threat in the wide receiver room? And I agree with that. And that's Wisconsin's really hasn't had that for the most part. It's a big like that's something. This is a big game to kind of look to see, can somebody challenge the status quo in the Big Ten? Can one of these teams break away this year? These two, I think it's Wisconsin. Like I said, I think the milk is souring a little up in Penn State, but it's
well. Also for Wisconsin though, like they have to win this game because
they have to get off to an aggressive start. I would agree.
Yeah, they have. Whereas Penn State is going to have the chance. If the others, Penn State is just going to play better competition technically.
Yeah, no, I agree. And
so they're going to have more chances. So if they lose this game but beat Ohio State, right? Or if Michigan or Michigan State end up being good, like they have way more chance. Indiana, Wisconsin chances are pretty low unless somebody surprises us on that side of the bracket. On that side of the Big Ten.
I very much agree with this. Like this is a big game for Wisconsin. And I think I lean Wisconsin even more on this one, mostly because they're returning so much defensively. Jim Leonard is very aggressive. He likes to play press coverage. He likes to send a ton of blitz. And we haven't seen Clifford really excel at that. And so if you can't get the running game going, and you're in a new scheme, you're in a new system. Yes, it's not a COVID year. You've been able to have a more traditional offseason. It was the same reason I picked Nebraska last week. When you're implementing so many new systems, it's hard, and you're going against a team that has had stability. There's no changes scheme-wise. You're returning a ton of guys. At opening week, I tend to lean that way from a betting perspective because of that. But it is we'll put it this way: Penn State has the goods to be. They have all the ingredients to make a very good meal. It's just whether or not they can cook, essentially.
Yeah. So it is a must-win game for Wisconsin. Looking at these schedules respectively, Wisconsin plays Eastern Michigan, Notre Dame, which is good. Michigan with Illinois, Army, Purdue, Iowa, Rutgers, Northwestern, Nebraska, Minnesota.
Yep.
So Wisconsin has to win this game.
Absolutely.
And Nittany Lions they have way more chances. They play Auburn, they play Indiana, they play Ohio State. They have, at the very least, they play Michigan. I don't know how good Michigan is going to be, but it doesn't matter because the sports world will see it as a good win, even if Michigan is terrible.
Yes.
So they have way more. They have at least one more game.
Yeah,
one more game chance than Wisconsin has.
They have an opportunity if they lose. For them, obviously winning the game is important, but it's almost more important to start to see what you can implement offensively.
Yes.
For the rest of the season, like you're going to get a great gauge of we're going to get an awesome gauge at where Penn State is at offensively based on this game. And then from there, we can really start to we're going to earmark this game for later down the road as to like, all right, how are they progressing? Because they're getting right off the bat a very good defense.
Yeah, this is, like you said, this is going to be one of those games, I think, when we're talking about separating teams, or you're like, oh, week one doesn't really count. For Penn State and Wisconsin, week one will count for them. And I think the same is true for Indiana and Iowa. I think for everybody else, it's probably like, If Minnesota wins, it counts for Minnesota.
100%. No, yeah. that's winning the Super Bowl for Minnesota. If
Ohio State wins that game, then week one doesn't count.
Yeah. For Ohio State, it's not only important to win this game, but for Ohio State, it's huge to see what you got at quarterback because, like I said, you got Oregon next week, which right away, next week, we are going to find out, is Oregon or Ohio State legit this year? Because both those teams, I think, are jockeying for position to be in the playoffs.
Right.
And it's going to be super important to get that big win because that's going to be Ohio State. We're going to see how the Big Ten shakes out this year and their competition level. But that's a very big proving ground game, especially for the committee. if they lose one to still try to get in, because, how did you play against a team that oozes talent in Oregon? That is, we're not going to say necessarily playoff contender right now. They're on that knife's edge for me. So that's a big game next week.
Speaking of the Big Ten, it's just so, like when you look at the Big Ten standing, Illinois is at the top of the Big Ten West, and like knowing that Nebraska lost that game, and knowing that they're at the bottom of the Big Ten right now, but also the bottom of the Big Ten West, like where do you go from here? Okay, I won't beat a dead horse. I know I missed that conversation, but goodness,
it is. We were saying it. I said It was a great game if you won, and it was a bad game if you lost, because you were everybody in the nation was tuning in. Like, that was the best win-win situation, or best win-loss situation in a while for college football program. Because if you lost, like Scott Frost lost, you probably had boosters calling each other like, "What's his buyout again?" Like, we just got embarrassed nationally with everybody watching. Like, Illinois didn't win that game; we lost it. And if you won, then you're going like, "Hey, maybe Nebraska's got something." Like it. I didn't think they had something I thought they were going to win that game. I bet them to win that game. They should have won that game. They should have covered that game. I did not factor in the fact that Adrian Martinez was apparently going to forget how to throw a football, and Scott Frost was going to be outcoached by Brett Bielema in his first game at Illinois. Like, I didn't factor that in. That's on me. But Nebraska was very dominant there. Well, I shouldn't say dominant there. They were more dominant than Illinois for the most part in that game. They just had some put your brain into a bone. Yeah, to say the least.
Very stupid mistakes. Did we talk about this game tomorrow? This UAB JSU game?
We did not. I don't have a ton on it right now. I kind of like Jacksonville State a little bit off my preliminary look at it, because I think we just sort of, UAB is a name that everybody sort of just associates with, because they're sort of on that fringe that, like, if you pay attention to college football, they have a decent program, but they lost a lot from what I remember in my research. And I think they're not, this year's team isn't resemblant of what we maybe associate with UAB.
Yeah, I don't know much about this game. I know I'm going to watch it. I know I've said that a lot this.
Oh, I'm watching it all.
Yeah. It's one of those games where, like, so these like the FCS will get to see, like, one, how COVID affected all those teams over there. But, Jacksonville State finished 7-2 in that weird, they played during the like weird months, right? They played during the off months. Yeah. So we'll see how that affects them coming back to play in the fall. I don't know. I'm just excited for this game. I think that game is going to be a shootout too.
Yeah, it should be. I agree. That'll be an interesting one to watch. I had really only, it's not a huge in-dive one, but kind of one I'm betting this week that I was looking at. North Carolina, Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech is a dying program. Justin Fuente. Justin Fuente, I have not been a fan of his. I thought it was an okay hire at the time, but he has proven to be a poison pill for a program that really, I'm not saying they have national championship aspirations, but should be competitive. Like, they're in a good recruiting ground. They're sort of the only one in the state. And the Nova region is good for football. The Tidewater area is good. They have roots into the South in some of the southern states. Like, that program should be a lot better than it is.
I mean, they're a name brand.
Yeah, they're a name. Exactly. They're a name brand. When you have your quarterback and Hooker leaving your program to go to the dumpster fire in Tennessee, I think that speaks volume for the direction of the program. I'll be interested to see what they do. I think there are some good coaching hires out there for them, but I think UNC, even though they're replacing, talk about a team that is replacing a ton of production, especially at the skill positions. But they win at the line.
It seems like they're loading up. It seems like UNC has built this tradition of, like, we're going to be a legitimate threat.
Yeah.
We are going to play the game. Whatever game you tell us to play, we're going to play that. So if you want to throw it, we'll throw it. If you want to run it, we'll run it. If you want to do, I know we talked about this with Miami and the tricky plays, but I think UNC is another, like, chaos creator on the field, right?
100% agree with that. Yep.
Where you're just like, what are they doing?
Yeah.
What?
Especially offensively. They're mad scientists offensively. It's insane what they try to do. Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't work all the time.
No.
It's chaos. But
yeah.
when it does work, you're just like, what just happened? I know they're missing some depth at their wide receiver right now. For UNC, I think one of their backs is hurt too or questionable. So we'll see. But I think North Carolina wins this game easily.
Yeah, the line's at 5.5 last I checked. I'm taking North Carolina on that. Their offensive line and defensive line are better than Virginia Tech's defensive line and offensive line, and I think they just win in the trenches. And they have an elite quarterback in Sam Howell. And so while there are questions as wide receiver depth and what the running back room is going to look like, because you lose your top two running backs, you lose basically all your top wide receivers. You do return a lot on the offensive line. You return a lot on the defensive line. They have a cornerback named Storm Duck. I mean, that's all you need to know. Like that's a hell of a football name. So, I mean, if you're not taking action on Storm Duck, I don't know what you're doing. So, yeah, I am going North Carolina in that one, especially at the 5.5.
If you want to see two teams, if you want to see a team that is going in the right direction and a team that's going in the wrong direction, watch this UNC Virginia Tech game.
100% agree.
Yes.
I was also going to say we didn't really talk about it, but I was going to say if you want a game that is polar opposite from what you're going to get in the Big Ten with Michigan State, Northwestern, and Iowa, Indiana, tune into that Ole Miss Louisville game. That over-under set at 75. Those two defenses are about as nice as a morning trip to the bathroom after drunken Taco Bell. Like, it is just a shit show there. That's all offense.
Somebody might put up 50 points in that game.
Yeah, like Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin endeared me so much when there was that play last year. I don't know if you saw that clip where they had this huge explosive play and you just see his clipboard flying through the air. Like you can't even see him, but all of a sudden the shot, you just see a clipboard swirling in the air up because he threw it up in the air and just started running down the sideline with the wide receiver. I was like, I love Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. Like forever, I'm gonna watch them. It is hilarious.
Yeah, Yeah, you have to watch that. I mean, if you want to see a game with a basketball score,
yes, zero defense is being played.
Yes.
I think that's sort of it.
That's probably that game is also the game where you will probably see a punt or a kickoff return.
Yes,
if you're looking for that.
Yeah,
if that prop bet is out there.
I'm sure there is. I haven't looked at all the props yet, but I'm sure it is. I don't know. Oh, shoot. Okay, last one. I know we've been going long, but this is a game that I think is worth a mention, especially given, once again, they took advantage of the spotlight and the entire nation watching them. UCLA, LSU. The line's at 3. UCLA's the underdog here. Over under 65. We briefly mentioned it because former Michigan product shined like no star has probably shined before at UCLA in an opening game. I mean, incredible start to the season. I don't know if you have any initial thoughts on this game, but this is a game to really, I think a lot of people should be tuning into this game because this could be a lot of fun.
This is my wild overreaction to how well UCLA played in their opener, right? I think UCLA, and this is one of the sport takes that I hate. But when it's true, it's true. I think UCLA is just going to outscore LSU. I think LSU has the better personnel.
100%.
Has the better defense. I don't know what their offense looks like, one. But two, again, kind of like with that Indiana-Iowa game, if you allow UCLA's quarterback, who is very capable, to just sling that ball around, you're going to be on the bad end of a 20-point deficit.
Yeah, I agree. I was talking when we were talking Pac-12, like UCLA is sort of a sleeping giant. Like Chip Kelly's been trying to turn the boat in the right direction, and I think he's finally got it turned. Like they're not hitting it full speed, like they're still in the wake zone, but they're running the offense that they want to run. They don't have the personnel to really take off, but I think UCLA is a sleeping giant that is waking up under Chip Kelly this year. Like this is the year we finally start to see it go. And he's in a great recruiting ground. I mean, USC is, while they're getting guys, they're not like they could be overtaken in that recruiting area if Chip Kelly really gets the program going this year.
I mean, you get to go. I mean, UCLA is one of the I go to UCLA. Like I got a cool.
Exactly. Yeah. And you're in a state that produces top quarterback talent, great wide receiver and running back talent, like phenomenal talent. The state of California oozes football talent. The concerning part, you hit it right. Like Thompson Robinson, he can sling it. It was a little concerning how off he seemed last week because he had a QBR of 41.8, but it was also a very small sample size, and they were so dominant in the run game, that it wasn't really needed.
He didn't really have. It's kind of like it's like he took the day off.
Yeah.
bit, right? And he threw the ball when he needed to throw the ball, like when they needed a first down. I mean, but he had two huge plays in that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think part of it with the passing game, I chalk it up to a little bit shaking off the rust, to just the mentality set of like, I don't really need to do anything, because like every time they were at one point averaging like 20 yards a run, like they were just handing it off and gashing them. I think the other point in this game, and you kind of hit it on the head, where LSU has the better personnel. They're dealing with a lot, with the hurricane situation, families displaced, the travel alone. I mean, it took them 10 hours to get to Houston. They're in Houston for a short period of time. Then they got to fly out to LA. Like, it's a lot of jet lag, a lot of travel. Defensively, last year, it's hard to gauge what was Bo Pelini and the defense kind of uprising against him, because they just hated him in what was just kind of bad defense, but like they didn't have a ton of gap integrity on the defensive line. Like, they weren't that elite. Like, they could be elite. I think they have the talent to be a top 25 defense, but sometimes they didn't look like they really wanted to fight for it, or they just didn't have it in them. And UCLA is not going to be bullied. UCLA's offensive line is not coming into this game going, oh God, here comes the big bad SEC defensive line. Like, we've seen a lot nationally when the SEC steps out into these other conferences and teams kind of get spooked. UCLA isn't a pushover here. So there is a big question as to what LSU is going to do defensively, and they're not going to bully UCLA. So this is a super interesting game for me.
Yeah. I think UCLA, now, I'm not telling players to look at any lines in Vegas, focus on the game. But I think if you're a UCLA player and you look at that line and it's only 3, I think that should give you all the confidence in the world.
Yeah, I agree. And I like what LSU did. They went out and they hired the QB coach from Carolina, Joe Brady, spoke volumes about him. He was his recommended guy. Ed Orgeron obviously trusts Joe Brady, because Joe Brady put together one of the most historic offenses we've ever seen in college football. So I think they're, Ed Orgeron's sort of adjusting for the loss of Joe Brady and the coordinating situation, and there's no fantasy here. Ed Orgeron is there to be the CEO. He is not there to run the day-to-day. He's there for recruiting. He's there to make sure the program is running efficiently from an operation standpoint. He's more there to hire the right guys, and I think people want to say he's sort of, his seat's warming a little bit. I think he's got plenty of time. But
Ed Orgeron seat?
Yeah, I heard today on one of the shows that it's not necessarily warming, but the honeymoon period is over, is the way they phrased it.
Oh yes, I think the honeymoon. Yeah. But when you're coaching down there at these historical programs, that's always going to happen. Like, you took them to the promised land. They got a taste of it. Now they want that all the time now.
Yeah, and I think Ed's doing the right thing, though. He's not, committed to necessarily one specific way to do it. He's willing to take, advice offensively. He's willing to kind of let the coordinators do their thing. And he's also willing to fire them if they don't do their thing. And he's there to recruit, and he's doing a great job there. It's an interesting situation, but yeah, I think this is a tough game for week 1 for LSU. And I'm with you.
The other thing is, how does LSU prepare for this game? How do you prepare for? Unless you're going to plan to run over a Pac-12 school, right? But like you just pointed out, I don't think LSU's D-line is running over that O-line.
No.
I don't think that's happening. And so who does LSU – what game do I look at, for tape, for whatever, and say, okay, this is the defensive scheme we take against UCLA, other than getting to Thompson Robinson, right?
Right.
Is that your game plan, to get to him? I think everybody, and I hope UCLA adjusts for this, you are not going to be able to run the ball like you did against Hawaii. You can hang that up.
Yeah.
You can hang that up.
You got to be a little bit more aggressive. Now, do I think, the body control was fantastic. Oh my God, I'm blanking on his name, by the running back out of Michigan who's now in UCLA.
Charbonnet.
Right?
Like,
his body control was phenomenal. He was making some beautiful cuts out there, great footwork. Like, he's good enough to make a play. Like, I think they'll still have maybe an explosive play or whatnot, but they're not averaging like 20 yards carry like what they were doing at one point in that game. They're not having these ginormous holes. Like, they're going to have opportunities and they're going to be able to move the ball. But you're right, they're going to have to be a little bit more creative. And I do think the Hawaii game was a good warm-up game for them to kind of, 1, build confidence, but 2, kind of dissect, like, all right, we're physical at the offensive line, but we need to kind of be a little bit more creative. We put something on tape to kind of, LSU's not going to be like, shit, are they going to run all over us? Which they're not, but now you can be a little bit more creative. You can throw some things. Like, you didn't have to throw the playbook at Hawaii. You got to hold a lot back, which I think is a huge advantage for UCLA.
Yeah, I mean, if you're LSU and you're looking at that at Zach Charbonnet and Thompson Robinson, as of right now, that's the best duo, quarterback running back duo.
Yeah, it's up there.
So
it's extremely good. Yeah.
Also, I'm so happy for Charbonnet, because this is what he should have been doing at Michigan, right?
Yes, 100%, 100% agree. I mean, he should more than, like, yes, the holes were giant, but he was also making dudes miss. He had great body control, was reading his line, like, he just played extremely well and showed he was highlighting his talent, which was awesome for him. So I'm interested on the UCLA. I've got some good leans here. You know, we'll get this wrapped up. We went a little bit longer today, but there was just so much to cover week one. These shows will not be as long going forward, but there's just so much to cover. I mean, we didn't even get to the fake high school stuff.
Oh man, we might have to do like a side podcast, like a special episode on the fake. I went down a rabbit hole on that whole thing.
I still can't believe that like there's going to be a 30 for 30 on this. Like it, like yeah, like they're talking about how they were going to get a Netflix show. Oh, they're getting one now. Like there's going to be a Netflix documentary, a 30 for 30 on this. Like it is jaw dropping what went on there with IMG Academy and Bishop.
And at first it was funny, and then it became very like surreal and realistic and dangerous for those players. Yes. Yeah.
There's. Go ahead.
And I think like the media, like everyone had the same trajectory of like, oh, this is funny. ESPN got duped to, oh, this is horrifying.
Yes, 100%. And the kid like tore his ACL in the game, and like people were like, what the fuck's going on here?
And these kids aren't eating. I mean, reportedly, allegedly,
all allegations,
sleeping on the floors of hotels. Like it's a whole. It's just sad.
Yep, it is. But it's insane that ESPN got duped like this. I know they said they outsourced the scheduling, which one, how do you do that? And two, who are you outsourcing to that? Like they claimed they have 5 D1 5-star like recruits. That we live in the 21st century. You can easily look these people up and verify that they are
24/7 is free.
Yes. Like free. What are we talking about? So yeah,
allegedly they had 19 and 20-year-olds on the team.
Yeah,
but that's unconfirmed.
Allegation that there was a JUCO dropout on there, which is unconfirmed as well, but an allegation. Like I don't. It's a bad situation, but an incredible story to come out, and I'll be very interested for the documentary that will be following here very soon, to say the least.
Also, I think the media company the marketing company that ESPN went through released a statement saying that, well, we put out a call for somebody to play IMG Academy and no one wanted to play them, and this is the school that stepped up. And I was like, so cancel the game.
Yeah. Yes.
IMG Academy is not hurting for games.
No. IMG Academy is just another, like, they took prep school to another level with that place.
That is a brief. If your child, there are 5-star athletes, and then there's athletes that go to IMG. You know.
It's a very good way to put it.
Yeah, it's always amazing to me that like Miles Bridges went to like the basketball, version for a little bit. Like, then it makes me think like, oh, did Izzo underutilize that talent? It
is certainly a question.
Right.
Alrighty, I don't really have any. I don't know if you have any other notes.
No. I am excited. I will be in the stands for Northwestern on Friday at 8 p.m.
You wanna shout out that Twitter handle for all your takes and picks this week?
Yes. If I have tweets for the game, you can follow me at DTW Freeman at DTW Freeman on the Twitter. That's where you'll find me, or just go to the Trophy Kids handle and you'll see me interact with the handle there and get.
I gotta update that. I gotta update that bio to reflect all those who participate in this show that are active on social. Mike isn't, the guy who does football with me isn't active, but I gotta get you and Tim in there. It's gonna be a good week. I'm so excited. These picks I gave out, they're sort of tentative. I'm pretty solid on the UNC one. I'm leaning heavy dogs. I'm probably leaning UCLA. I'll give my picks out this week. Make sure you're following us at Trophy Kids Pod. I'll probably put out a little content, too, a little bit more in-depth about Georgia, Clemson once I officially make that pick, but I am leaning dogs on that one.
Yep.
And we'll go from there. It's going to be a good season. I love week 1. It's all about getting eyeballs on games. Don't blow your bankrolls off the bat here. Keep it simple from a betting perspective if you're going to bet. And then week 2, we're going to make some aggressive moves, I think. We're going to learn a lot this week about who's got what. There's a lot of good test games out there, so we'll say that.
The overreactions are coming, ladies.
Oh, they're coming. I love taking advantage that second week of the overreactions. So it'll be good. As always, peace.
Peace.